you want to, Deputy or Sergeant to come back, we're up and running. I'll let him know. I mean, if you want to go down, that's fine. Thank you, Sergeant, for doing that. I want to need to probably test this. While we're here, I'm assuming everybody that is out there can hear what's going on. I know Mr. Kofer and Ms. Nelson are both on there. If you all hear, if they cannot hear what's going on, let me know. I think I've got the audio set the way it needs to be. I'm getting a thumbs up from him, but thumbs up emoji. So take that as a good sign. Are you all, while we're waiting, are you all going to start in sequential order? How are we going to go forward on just?
We have some stipulations to introduce.
Okay.
I believe we will start with number 2. That's the state's burden, so we would rely upon them.
Mr. Mayor, there were 2 witnesses that I'm aware of outside. Are you just going to take their testimony and then your argument on each of the motions? Is there, we're going to hear testimony, argument?
I think
I leave it up to you all. I
think our plan would be to just get the testimony done. There's some stuff that I know the state's going to introduce to Detective Harrington. There's things we need to just get out. We can go ahead and do it. Then while he's on the stand, yes, we can just have argument at the end.
That's fine. That's
all at one time.
That's perfectly fine. I just want to get an idea of what I need to do and what to expect.
Yes, sir. Testimony and then argument.
Jolene's cousin. Jordan Beard is 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 Jolene's cousin.
All right.
Jordan Beard is Jolene's cousin.
Wait for her.
Jordan Beard is Jolene's cousin. 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 Jordan Beard is
All right, so just for the record, her behavior would not allow us to go forward with this hearing. However, we do have the camera set up down in the holding cell downstairs. with sound where she can monitor all of the proceedings, just like everybody else is that's remotely observing these proceedings. And obviously, counsel, if you need to go down there to confer with her, or otherwise need some time to go down there for any reason, let me know. Okay, we certainly stop the proceedings.
Judge Teresa Saab, I just want the record to reflect that I did attempt to confer with Ms. Kessler prior to court in the holding cell downstairs, and that she refused to speak with me and engaged in the same behavior that she just did in court, repeating the same phrase that Jordan Beard is Julian Cummings' cousin over and over again. Then I also asked the bailiff to ask her if she wished to be in court, and she told the bailiff that he could not convey messages from her to me. So we just have no communication with her at all.
Understood, and I appreciate you putting that on the record. We'll make sure that let me make sure that the holding cell camera's working, and then we'll get started. It is up and the audio is connected. Somebody. And Ms. Nelson also joined in that she can also hear but does not know how to do the emoji. So there we go. All right, so we've got the camera down there. Audio is connected. I think we can go ahead and get started now if you'd like.
Okay, before the state begins, Judge, I did want to introduce, if I could, we've prepared 4 joint stipulations, signed by myself and Ms. Thurston. I would hand this to the court. Your Honor, the first joint stipulation involves the items that were collected in motion number 5. I did want to clarify if the court has access to motion, suppression motion number 5.
I do. You give me a second. I've got all of them pulled up here.
Okay. Amended motion number 5.
Suppression motion, amended motion number 5.
Your Honor, we listed all the items that were collected, A, and the last one is H, but we actually made a mistake there. We listed H twice, so the state was agreeing to the initial A through J as part of that stipulation. The very last one that's listed as H and should not be any and all laboratory tests. That is not part of the stipulation. But all the other items are.
All right.
Stipulation number 2, Your Honor, is with regard to suppression motion number 6. Again, it's listing all the items, stipulating all the items are listed in that motion. Joint stipulation number 4 applies to amended suppression motion number 4. Which deals with the time Ms. Kessler was arrested and then later transported to the Nassau County Jail. And joint stipulation number 4 is in regard to motion number 10. So I just wanted the court to be aware of what each of those applied to.
All right. Well, I appreciate you all getting together and stipulating to this thing. So
yes,
cut out a lot of testimony that we can get to more substantive issues. Okay. So at this point, are we ready to proceed on? I guess it would be really taking testimony for those motions where it's state's burden and just getting all the testimony out of the way.
yes, sir, Judge.
Ms. Thurston.
Yes, sir, the state's ready.
All right, you can call your first witness.
Wayne Harrington.
Deputies will go retrieve the detective. Madam Clerk, please swear the witness in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Just so the witnesses are aware, you are on video. There's a camera right there, just to let you know.
Thank you.
All right, you may proceed. If you can
We
do
might
that.
just invoke the rule. I'll take it.
There's nobody in here that's a witness. For COVID distancing reasons, we just kept everybody out. We saw who was gonna be here, and they're just all out right now.
Yes, sir.
So, go ahead.
Good morning, Detective Harrington. Would you please state your name for the record?
Wayne Harrington,
By whom are you employed?
the Nassau County Sheriff's Office,
For how long?
24 years.
What position do you currently hold?
I'm a sergeant in the Criminal Investigations Division.
What position did you hold in 2018?
I was a detective in the Criminal Investigations Division.
Sergeant Harrington, were you the lead or are you the lead detective in the Kimberly Kessler case?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that case begin as a missing persons investigation?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
When was Julian Cummings reported missing?
She was reported missing on May 14th, 2018.
Is that a Monday?
Yes, ma'am.
By whom?
By her mother, Ann Johnson.
And did you determine the date that Julian Cummings was last seen?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
That would have been May 12th, 2018.
That would be Saturday.
Yes, ma'am.
In the course of your investigation on May 14th, 2018, did you go to Julian Cummings' home?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did you go inside?
Yes.
Did you observe any damage?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell us about that?
Sure, there were some cabinets that appear to be damaged. They were not attached properly. There were a couple that were hanging by the hinges. There was also some damage to a bedroom door. There were some dents and holes in the door area. There was one hole that had apparently been covered by tape.
The holes that were not covered, were they consistent with someone punching or kicking a door?
Yes, ma'am, they could have been.
Were you aware of, or did you become aware of a previous call to that address that Deputy Pinkston responded to?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall the date of Pinkston's response?
I'm referring to my investigative summary. That call would have been on May 9th, 2018.
Okay. He wrote that up as an information report.
Yes, ma'am.
And once you learned of that, what did you do?
After I learned the report,
Yes, sir.
I requested that Deputy Pinkston respond to the scene in order to show me if he could or let me know what damage he observed when he was there at the previous call.
Okay. And did he tell you that the damage to the cabinet doors was consistent with what he saw on May 9th, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Could he advise whether the damage to the doors, the master bedroom door, whether that was there on May 9th?
He stated he did not know.
So some damage was accounted for, some was not.
That's correct.
Did you, through your investigation, learn the name and phone number of Julian Cummings' coworker who had worked with Julian Cummings on Saturday, May 12th, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how did you learn that?
I had spoken to the owner of Jolene's place of employment, Tangle's Hair Salon, and was provided the name and phone number as well as the address for the coworker that she was working with on Saturday.
Okay. And at the time, the name that was provided to you was Jennifer Seibert.
Yes, ma'am.
And through the course of your investigation, did you ascertain that Jennifer Seibert is actually Kimberly Kessler?
Yes, ma'am.
And can we agree that then through your testimony, we'll consistently use Kessler?
Yes, ma'am.
Once you got the name for Miss Kessler and her phone number, do you recall the phone number you got?
I would have to refer to my report. I couldn't tell you off my head, but I'd be glad to get that for you.
Okay.
Number was 904-524-9515.
Thank you. Did you call Ms. Kessler?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
About what time on May 14th, 2018, did you call Ms. Kessler?
It was approximately 10:15 p.m.
Were you able to get a hold of her?
No, ma'am, I left a voice message.
Turning your attention then to the next day, May 15th, 2018. Did Ms. Kessler return your phone call?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
What time?
It was approximately 7:45 a.m.
What number did she call you from?
She called me from the same number that I just provided.
The 524-9515?
Yes, ma'am, 904-524-9515.
Did she identify herself?
Yes, ma'am.
And then what did she say to you?
She immediately, before I even had asked any questions or really had spoken to her, she went into a long explanation about how her name could not be associated with any type of investigation. Her name could not be listed in any type of report, that she had a ex-boyfriend that was a stalker and an expert in computer forensics, and that her name was mentioned anywhere, he would track her down.
Okay. And then how did the conversation with Ms. Kessler go from there?
I explained to her that I identified myself and just, told her that I was conducting a missing person investigation. I just wanted to talk to her briefly. That basically I just needed to know. I let her know that Jolene had been reported missing by her mother, and that from the information I obtained, the last time she was seen when she was at work on Saturday, I asked her if Jolene was acting normally on that Saturday when they worked together, if she had discussed any plans for the weekend, if she had any idea about her whereabouts, or if she had seen her since that time.
And how did she respond?
She stated that basically they weren't close, they only worked together, that she had no idea what her plans for the weekend were, and she had not seen her since they had left work at approximately 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon.
So she told you they weren't close?
Yes.
Was this just kind of a chatty conversation, or were you pressing her for details?
No, this was just a very casual conversation. I mean, I thought it was a little unusual at the beginning of the conversation when she made the long description of, about the ex-boyfriend, but it was a very casual conversation. It would just be the normal part of any missing person investigation to try to contact the last person that I was aware of that had seen the missing person.
And in the context of the conversation that you had with Ms. Kessler, would it have been relevant to say, oh, well, I'm not sure where she went, but I borrowed her car?
Yes,
I'm not
ma'am.
going to object to that speculation.
Yeah, that's just a.
Did you ask open-ended questions of Ms. Kessler of what had occurred that Saturday, May 12th, 2018, when she was with Ms. Cummings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And she volunteered no information about borrowing or using or taking Jolene Cummings' car.
That's correct.
Did investigators with the Nassau County Sheriff's Office go to the Tankle Salon on May 15th, 2018, about 10 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Who did that?
Detective Thomas Kelly.
And then did Detective Kelly tell you what he learned while he was there?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And was this about, and we've agreed this was about 10 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what did Detective Kelly tell you?
He stated that he was having a conversation with the owner of the salon, Vicki, and that Vicki was actually on the phone with Kimberly Kessler, Kimberly Kessler, and that Vicki told Kimberly that there was a detective there at the salon. At that time, Ms. Kessler was pulling in the parking lot in her vehicle, and when she learned that there was a detective there, she left without coming inside.
Okay. Did Vicki Simmons advise Detective Kelly what kind of car Miss Kessler drives?
Yes, ma'am.
And what kind of car was that?
It would be a black Soul, Kia Soul.
And was that what she drove into the parking lot that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Detective Kelly indicate to you that Miss Simmons had told Miss Kessler that the police were there wanting to talk to her?
Yes, ma'am.
Did either Mr. or Mrs. Simmons provide you with the address that they had for Kimberly Kessler?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you check it out?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you learn?
No such address existed.
Was Julian Cummings' vehicle recovered?
Yes.
When?
On the, refer to my report again, it was that same day, would have been the 15th.
Where?
It was in a parking lot in Yulee outside of Home Depot in Yulee.
Did Nassau County Sheriff's Department respond and search and seize Miss Cummings' vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. It was not searched there, but they seized and it was later searched.
Seized and searched.
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any keys to the vehicle in the vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Was Julian Cummings' cell phone in her vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Did the Nassau County Sheriff's Department obtain a video which showed who drove the Miss Cummings' Ford Explorer into the parking lot and parked it?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did that video come from?
From the ViStar Credit Union that is near the Home Depot and the gate station where near where Miss Cummings' vehicle was parked.
And when was Miss Cummings' vehicle driven into and parked at the Home Depot parking lot, according to the ViStar video?
It would have been the early morning hours of May 13th. I believe the exact time was around 1:17 a.m.
So at that point, what you know is the last person to see Julian Cummings was the defendant, Miss Kessler, at 5 p.m. on Saturday.
Judge, I'm gonna object to that. That's leading and that asks for facts, not an evidence.
All right, well, I think you rephrased the question. Okay.
Detective Harrington, reflecting back on your previous testimony today, the defendant told you that she last saw Miss Cummings about 5 p.m. on Saturday.
Yes, ma'am.
And were you aware of anyone who saw Miss Cummings after that date and time?
Objection, that calls for speculation.
Oh,
No, ma'am. I was not aware of anybody else who's seen her since that time.
Did you all check out Miss Cummings' cell phone records?
Yes, we did.
Was she using her phone after 5 p.m. on Saturday, May 12th?
No, ma'am.
All right, so then on Sunday, May 13th at 1:17 a.m., Miss Cummings' vehicle is parked in the Home Depot parking lot. And what do you see on the video?
In the video, I see a person that's dressed in all black or dark colored clothing exit the driver's side of the vehicle. They walk around the vehicle and out of camera range, but they're walking towards a gate gas station that's almost immediately in front of the area where you would just cross a little small service road in front of the vehicle, and there's a gate gas station there. Likely at that time in the morning, it would probably be the only business open other than maybe a drive-through or window or something.
Did you all also obtain the gate gas station video surveillance?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you see at that point?
We see what appears to be the same person dressed in all black, make contact with an employee of the gate gas station outside the front of the gas station. The person speaks to the employee briefly, then goes inside and purchases a bottle of water. It appears that the person used a debit or credit card to make that purchase.
And about using the two videos, the ViStar video and the gate gas station video, how much time passes between when the person dressed in black walks away from Julian Cummings vehicle until the person dressed in black walks into the gate gas station.
A very short period of time, within minutes.
Does the person who walks from the victim's vehicle and into the gate gas station eventually leave the gate gas station?
Yes.
How?
She is picked up, she leaves in a small minivan type vehicle that was determined to be a taxi service.
Did you make a still photo of the person dressed in black who exited Jolene's vehicle and walked into the gate station?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you show that to Mr. Simmons?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and was that done May 16th of 2018?
I believe so.
Did Mr. Simmons identify the person in the still photo from the videos?
Yes.
As who?
Kimberly Kessler.
Continuing with May 16th, 2018, did a detective with the Nassau County Sheriff's Office get a search warrant or court order to use Kimberly Kessler's cell phone location information to locate Kimberly Kessler?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did that?
Detective Thomas Kelly.
Judge, just so the record is clear, we had previously filed a motion to suppress that testimony, which you had already ruled on, but we would renew our objection.
Overruled.
Why did you do that?
To attempt to determine her location so that she could be spoken to in reference to the missing person case.
Okay. And now, you had already talked to her once about your missing person case.
Yes, ma'am.
After viewing the videos, did you have a heightened concern?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you also concerned about Julian Cummings?
Yes, ma'am.
After Detective Kelly got the search warrant for the location, real-time location information for Kimberly Kessler's cell phone, how did things proceed?
Myself, several detectives from the Sheriff's Office, members of the FBI, Florida Department of Law Enforcement were trying to locate Ms. Kessler. We were getting multiple, or Detective Kelly was getting multiple different areas where the phone was possibly pinging. At times we were in downtown Ferndale Beach area, at times we were in the Jacksonville area. Ultimately, we ended up in St. Johns County area.
During this time, was the Nassau County Sheriff's Office crime scene unit processing the Tangles hair salon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did they make any findings?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell us about that?
They found that there was a drawer near the reception area of the salon that was broken. They saw what appeared to be some small blood droplets in the reception area. They were presumptively tested and did give indication that it was blood.
Did they use luminol?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did the luminol indicate?
It fluoresced and indicated the presence of blood.
Was there any indication of a possible attempt at cleaning up the blood?
Yes, ma'am. When the luminol fluoresced, there was some indications that there were some swipe patterns that would indicate that someone had cleaned, that could indicate someone had cleaned up some blood.
Did that heighten your concern even more about Jolene Cummings and her whereabouts or
Yes,
safety? And the defendant's involvement?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the Nassau County Sheriff's Office begin checking rest stops in the area of Nassau, Duval, Clay, St. Johns County?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
Once we had determined that her address was false and she was, we were getting phone pings from different areas, it just made sense that if it was possible that she was living out of her car. I know just from training experience that rest areas and places like that are a good place to check.
Okay. Wi-Fi, bathrooms, that sort of thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Using the cell site locator information, was the Nassau County Sheriff's Office directed to a particular area?
Yes, we were directed to an area in northern St. Johns County.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but basically FBI was providing the cell site information to the Nassau County Sheriff's Office, and y'all were following up on it?
Yes, ma'am.
And they were getting it from the cell site provider?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know exactly how the process works, but they were obtaining it by whatever means that they use and providing it to us.
Okay. And Detective Charity Rose eventually spots the Kia belonging to the defendant at the rest stop at St. Johns County, I-95 and 210?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened next?
Several members of Nassau County Sheriff's Office, as well as the FBI, went to that location. We observed the vehicle there. We approached.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you there. Were y'all using lights or sirens?
No, ma'am.
Proceed, please.
Once we got there, we approached the vehicle. I noticed that the vehicle appeared to be running. I could not see very well inside the vehicle. The rear windows were tinted. I was kind of near the front passenger fender well, so I could see partially in through the front windshield. It looked as if somebody was sleeping in the rear of the vehicle. We did give loud commands to identifying ourselves as police officers and asked that the person exit the vehicle.
Okay. Did law enforcement use a vehicle or anything else to block the defendant's vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Did you have your firearm out of the holster?
Yes.
In holding it in what manner?
I was holding it in a manner that would be described as circle of safety, which would be, I can tell you or I can demonstrate, but I'd have to take my jacket off.
That's okay. That's okay. What's the idea behind circle of safety?
The idea of circle of safety would basically, I have the weapon up near my body, pointed down towards a small circle around my feet, not directly, obviously at my feet. But it differs as opposed to like a low ready position. It's just basically pointed towards the ground.
Did any of the law enforcement officers have their firearm out pointed at Ms. Kessler or her vehicle?
No, ma'am, not that I observed.
Would there have actually been a danger to law enforcement if y'all had your guns pointed at Ms. Kessler or her vehicle?
Yes, we would have broken what's known as the laser rule. And in addition to that, our policy states that if we use a gun to gain compliance, if I point my gun at you and order you to do something, it is considered a use of force, and I have to fill out a report on it.
Okay. So you've got officers on both sides of the car?
Yes.
Did Ms. Kessler move from the back to the front of her car and exit?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see her hands?
I did. I can't say that I could see them the full time, but as soon as I could see her hands, I holstered my weapon.
What happened next?
She exited the vehicle. She exited on the passenger side. I was on the opposite side of the vehicle. She walked, I don't remember the exact location, kind of over behind the vehicle. I walked over in that direction, was speaking to her in just a normal conversational type stance. Told her who I was, that I was a detective who had spoken to her on the phone, and that I was seeking information in reference to Jolene being missing in her vehicle.
So basically you asked her the same thing you had already asked her on the phone.
Basically.
Okay. You said she walked to behind her vehicle. So she walked on her own volition?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was she cuffed?
No, ma'am.
Did somebody pat her down?
I believe somebody patted her down. I do not know who did that. Normally, if possible, we will have an officer of the same sex do that, but I don't recall who patted her down.
Okay. Was it you?
No, ma'am.
So other than possibly a female officer patting her down, did anyone touch Ms. Kessler?
No, ma'am.
And after she walked to the back of her vehicle, you said she stood there and had a conversation with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Was anyone else right in that little circle with you and the defendant?
I believe Detective Kelly was standing there.
So there was two of you standing with the defendant talking?
Yes.
Okay. And after telling her that you're putting a face with a voice, that you're the person who had talked to her on the phone, and that you're still investigating the whereabouts of Julian Cummings, how did she respond?
She again stated, I told you that I don't know where she is, that we're not close, that I have no idea what happened to her.
Okay. Did you tell her that you suspected someone of a murder?
No, ma'am.
Did you tell her that you suspected her of a grand theft auto?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you weren't accusing her of any crime, you were just asking her for information.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you tell her you were seeking information about Jolene Cummings and her vehicle, or just Jolene Cummings, or do you
I
recall?
stated Jolene Cummings and her vehicle.
Did you ask her another question?
Yes, I noticed that she had Band-Aids all over her. You know, she had several Band-Aids on her hands and had Band-Aid on her face. I could see a scratch on her face. And I asked her what happened to her face.
And did she respond?
Yes.
What'd she say?
She said that she had ran into a tree limb while riding her bike.
Did you ask her another question?
I asked her about Jolene's vehicle, if she had been ever been in Jolene's vehicle.
And how did she respond?
She said no.
Did she repeat that she had only worked at Tangle Salon for a few weeks and she and Jolene were not that close?
Yes.
And after telling you she had never been in Jolene Cummings' vehicle, did you ask her any more questions?
I made a statement towards her because I knew at that time that she was not being honest, and I said, I don't think you're telling me the truth about that, or I don't believe you, or something to that effect.
And how did she respond to that?
She stated that if I did not believe her, maybe she should talk to an attorney.
So you did not accuse her of a crime. Did you confront her with any evidence of her guilt?
No, ma'am.
What did you do next?
I made contact with you via phone and advised you of the situation. I then traveled to Judge Foster's house in Jacksonville to obtain an arrest warrant.
And did you obtain an arrest warrant for grand theft auto
Yes, ma'am.
for Ms. Kessler?
Yes, ma'am.
Then what did you do?
I made contact with the officers on scene. I don't recall specific. I believe it was probably Captain Anstead that I spoke to and told him that I had obtained the arrest warrant with the judge's signature.
Did you call or have someone call the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
Because I do not have jurisdiction in St. Johns County. I can't make an arrest in St. Johns County.
Did St. Johns County Sheriff's Office respond to the arrest stop?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know from talking to your fellow officers what Ms. Kessler was doing while you were in Jacksonville obtaining the warrant from Judge Foster?
She had re-engaged conversation with the Detective Brewer and Detective I don't know who's called Douglas. I apologize, and was just having casual conversation, mostly with Detective Brewer. He said that they talked a lot about religion and things in the Bible.
Is there actually a recording of that?
Yes.
So she had would it be fair to say she had a fairly lengthy conversation with the detectives, just chit chat while you were gone?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to object to this as irrelevant as to motion number 2, amended motion to suppress number 2. Anything that happened after the warrant was obtained is inadmissible and irrelevant relating to whether there was probable cause to initially detain.
Well, perhaps I misunderstood. I thought we were getting all the testimony now. And then we're going to argue motions 2 through 10.
I'm not sure that this testimony is relevant to any of the other motions.
It's overruled. You challenged the arrest warrant, the affidavit, and, you know, I think that that can very well be relevant. The motions are fairly broad and they cover a lot of issues and a lot of ground, and I think that I'll be able to exclude and not consider anything that's not relevant to those motions, but I'm not sure that this isn't relevant, so go ahead.
Thank you. So did you return to St. Johns County?
Yes, ma'am.
To the rest stop where Miss Kessler was?
Yes, ma'am.
And was she then arrested on your warrant by the St. Johns County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, ma'am.
Was her being Miss Kessler's Kia also towed and seized based on a warrant that St. Johns County obtained?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware of whether St. Johns County then obtained a search warrant to search basically the defendant's body for body samples?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
And what do you know right off what time frame that was?
It was in the same, during the same night, I believe.
I want to direct your attention to May 18th, 2018. Was the Nassau County Sheriff's Office checking storage businesses in relation to the defendant in this crime?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you go to multiple storage, not you personally, but your department, did you go to multiple different storage businesses?
Yes, ma'am.
Basically looking to see if Miss Kessler had a storage unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and why were y'all doing that?
With her apparently living out of her car, we wanted to see if she had any storage. There was a lot of stuff in her car, but we believe that she owned other things and that she may have a storage unit.
Okay, and did Detective Brewer with the Nassau County Sheriff's Office locate a unit at storage on Sadler that was registered or rented to the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that was on the 18th of May, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
And Detective Brewer was able to ascertain from the business that the defendant rented unit 17?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
All right, Cross.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
It was just a short time before midnight on May 16, 2018, that Detective Rose located Miss Kessler's car at the northbound rest area.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was on Interstate 95 in St. Johns County.
Yes, ma'am.
At that time, there was no outstanding warrant for Miss Kessler's arrest on any criminal charge.
No, ma'am.
And the probable cause that you had at that time for Miss Kessler's detention was for grand theft auto for a vehicle seen in Nassau County.
Can you explain it? When you're asking, I understand what you're saying about probable cause, but yes, it was in reference to a vehicle stolen in Nassau County, if that's the question you're asking.
That's really all the facts you had to connect Miss Kessler with Jolene Cummings, that she was seen exiting a vehicle that belonged to Jolene Cummings at 1 o'clock in the morning on the same morning, actually.
I also because I also knew that she was the last person that I was aware of that had seen her.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. You know that Miss Kessler told you she last saw Miss Cummings when she left the business, the Tangles Hair Salon, on the Saturday on May 12th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You haven't interviewed anybody else that might have been with Jolene Cummings between the closing of the salon and the car appearing in the video in the Home Depot parking lot.
We had conducted other interviews in reference to her ex-husband and ex-boyfriend, but certainly there were other people. It could have been anybody could have seen her after that.
Right, so you can't really say that my client was the last person who saw her. You don't know that.
No, ma'am. All I know is it was the last person I was aware of through my
Okay.
investigation at that point.
And so Ms. Cummings could have gone to the Home Depot, she'd have gone to the gate station, she could have gone through any of the drive-in restaurants there and been seen by many
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
people.
Sure.
So just so that we're clear, you don't know who else saw her after she left the Tangle Salon.
That's correct.
Okay. And so the only thing that you could stop and detain Ms. Kessler for at the rest area was grand theft auto of Ms. Cummings' vehicle. Is that right?
Yes, if she was being detained, yes, ma'am.
Okay, you didn't know on May 16, 2018, whether Jolene Cummings was deceased,
That's correct.
and you did not have any probable cause to connect Ms. Kessler with a homicide involving Jolene Cummings at that time.
No, ma'am, I didn't know a homicide had occurred at that time.
Right. In fact, you didn't know whether she was simply missing or she was the victim of foul play.
That's correct.
Now, when you all learned that Ms. Kessler's vehicle was in the rest area, several law enforcement officers arrived and surrounded her vehicle, correct?
I would not describe it as surrounded, but several officers approached her vehicle.
Okay, how many cars, law enforcement vehicles came to the rest area?
I don't know the exact number.
More than 8?
I don't believe it was more than 8, but I don't know.
Okay, well, let's go through the officers who were there then. There was FBI agent J. Rigil, R-I-G-I-L,
Yes, ma'am.
and there was FBI agent E. Pesquera, P-E-S-Q-U-E-R-A,
Yes, ma'am.
and there was Captain initial J. Anstett, A-N-S-T-E-T-T, of the Nassau County Sheriff's Office,
Yes, ma'am.
and there was Detective Dawn Brewer of the Nassau County Sheriff's Office,
Yes, ma'am.
and there was Detective David Douglas of the Nassau County Sheriff's Office,
Yes, ma'am.
and there was Detective initial D. Corbett, C-O-R-B-I-T-T, of the Nassau County Sheriff's Office,
Yes, ma'am.
and Detective Kelly, K-E-L-L-E-Y, of the Nassau County Sheriff's Office,
Yes, ma'am.
and you were there.
Yes.
Were there any other law enforcement officers that you remember being there?
Not that I remember, or I would have included them in my report.
So by my count, that's 8 officers. How many officers were sharing a vehicle?
That I don't know. It's certainly possible that some could have ridden together.
Okay, but so we have a possibility of 8 law enforcement vehicles. We have actually, well, then of course Detective Charity Rose was there in her car, so that would be 9, right?
Possibly.
She was the first person there,
Yes, ma'am.
and she was in a Nassau County detective's car,
Yes.
right? So there's 9, and she was definitely in her own car. Now, you don't recall where those cars were parked in relation to Ms. Kessler's Kia Soul?
They were not parked around. They were parked on different, what I would describe as aisles of the rest stop. From my recollection, I think the front half of the rest stop was closed for some reason. So both normally with a rest stop or without rest stop, semi trailers are assigned one half, and then cars and trucks and et cetera are assigned the other half. My recollection, the front half was closed, so everybody was on the backside.
Well, she was in between 2 semi trucks, right?
Yes.
All right, and so tell me, if you would, how the law enforcement vehicles were positioned in relation to her car and the 2 semi trailers. Where did you all pull into?
I can tell you where I pulled. I pulled in front of the vehicle, the next lane over. I can't tell you where all the vehicles were. I can tell you that it was not surrounding her vehicle where her vehicle was blocked.
Okay. And who was in communication with all of the law enforcement officers, the 8 other agents that were there?
We all had communication with each other.
And was it decided that you all would approach Ms. Kessler's vehicle together?
I don't know if that particular was discussed. I know we certainly discussed instead of Detective Rose, going ahead and approach the vehicle, we wait until somebody else gets there. I don't recall saying we were gonna all go up together or wait till everybody gets there.
Okay, but your report says that at the time that you all approached Ms. Kessler's vehicle, that law enforcement officers ordered Ms. Kessler out of the vehicle, and all law enforcement officers had their service weapons drawn. Is that correct?
I'll have to refer to my I know that several of us did. I can't say that every officer had their weapon drawn.
But your report says that all officers had their service weapons drawn.
I'm going to refer because my report says with our sidearms drawn, commands were given for the person to exit the vehicle. I don't see the word all, and I can't say that every officer had their weapons drawn.
Okay, but you were referring to all of the officers when you said our, correct?
Yes,
All right. Now, the purpose of drawing a firearm when approaching a suspect is to let the suspect know that the officer has a firearm in his or her possession and is holding a firearm, correct?
no, ma'am.
Why would you draw a firearm if you didn't want someone to know that you had one?
My firearm was drawn for officer safety purposes. I was approaching a vehicle where there could possibly be a danger. If I'd already identified a threat, it would not have been at the circle of safety position. It would have been towards that threat. The purpose of drawing my firearm out of the holster was because I was approaching a vehicle that was running that I could not see inside. And it makes it a little quicker that if I have to come up on a threat that I can do so more rapidly.
And so if Ms. Kessler had jumped out and tried to run, would you have used the firearm?
No, ma'am.
And what about FBI agent Ridgel? How was he or she holding that weapon?
I don't know.
And what about FBI agent Pesquiero? Do you remember how that weapon was being held?
I don't know. I can tell you that none of them were pointed in the direction of the vehicle because to do so would have created a crossfire situation or a break of the laser rule. And I personally, if I would have observed that, I would have said, "You're lasering me."
And Captain Anstett, do you recall how Captain Anstett's weapon was displayed?
No, ma'am.
What about Detective Brewer? Do you recall how Detective Brewer's weapon was displayed?
No, ma'am.
What about Detective Douglas? Do you recall how his weapon was displayed?
Just from previous conversation, I can't say I recall. We've had discussions since then as far as he stated to me that his was also in the circle of safety position.
Right. And Detective Corbett, do you know how Detective Corbett was carrying the weapon?
I don't. I just know I didn't observe any pointed towards
And
directly at the vehicle.
Detective Kelly?
No, ma'am.
But what about Detective Rose? Did she have a weapon?
From my recollection, I don't know if she approached at the same time as the rest of us, so I don't know.
Right. And Ms. Kessler was certainly not free to leave, being surrounded by officers with weapons in their hands, correct?
She was never told she wasn't free to leave. And again, you may overrule this as far as this happened with discussions afterwards, but Detective Douglas even stated that, when I left to go get the search warrant, he says if she asked to leave, and the cap said if she asked to leave, let her go.
But at the time that there were 9 officers surrounding Ms. Kessler's vehicle, and every single one had a firearm drawn. She was not.
Objection. That is not what the witness said.
Sustained, stop and start over.
She was patted down for officer safety.
I believe so.
And an individual who is free to leave is normally not patted down for officer safety, correct?
There are times when I'm going to pat somebody down even when they are free to leave.
Under what theory would that be?
If I had the idea that they may have a weapon, that it's possible that they are associated with a crime, especially a felony crimes, for safety purposes.
But that's
I'm
only
not
if
going to ask them if I can pat them down.
that's only if you're going to detain them, correct?
No, ma'am.
You can't just pat any person down walking down the street unless you encounter and detain them, right?
Objection argument.
I can at any point ask somebody if I'm in an interview type situation, especially if I think it's possible they're associated with a crime. I can ask to pat them down.
Okay, so you thought Ms. Kessler was associated with the crime and you had her there in an interview situation, correct? And that's why you felt that you needed to pat her down.
I did not pat her down.
Okay, well, or that someone needed to pat her
I
down.
believe somebody patted her down.
Okay. But normally, a citizen is free to go about his or her business without being patted down unless they're being detained by an officer, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. And then you and Detective Kelly began to talk with Ms. Kessler,
Yes,
and were you standing next to each other near her vehicle?
yes,
And neither of you advised Ms. Kessler of any constitutional right to remain silent, did you?
no, ma'am.
You did not, you nor Detective Kelly did not advise Ms. Kessler of her constitutional right to refrain from providing evidence against herself?
No, ma'am.
And you did not advise Ms. Kessler or hear Detective Kelly advise Ms. Kessler of her right to decline to answer any questions?
No, ma'am.
Neither you nor Detective Kelly advised Ms. Kessler that she was a suspect in any criminal offense?
No, ma'am.
And neither you nor Detective Kelly advised Ms. Kessler that she could have an attorney appointed to represent her if she could not afford one prior to any questioning of her?
No, ma'am.
You advised Ms. Kessler that you were seeking information about Julian Cummings and her vehicle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And you actually asked Ms. Kessler a question about the injuries to her face.
Yes, ma'am.
And again, you did not advise her of any of those constitutional rights prior to asking her about the injuries.
No, ma'am.
And then you asked Ms. Kessler whether she and Jolene had, quote, ever went anywhere together in Jolene's vehicle, end quote, right?
Yes,
And before you asked Ms. Kessler that, you did not advise her of any constitutional right to remain silent
no, ma'am.
or to have a lawyer present.
No, ma'am.
And Detective Kelly didn't advise her of that before you asked Ms. Kessler about going anywhere in Jolene's vehicle.
No, ma'am.
And then you next asked Ms. Kessler if she had ever had permission to drive Jolene's vehicle.
Yes, ma'am. I don't remember if that was a separate question or part of the, have you ever been in it or been allowed to drive it?
Right, and just so we're clear, neither you nor Detective Kelly advised her of any of her constitutional rights before that question was asked.
No, ma'am.
All right. Now, do you recall what time it was that you contacted Assistant State Attorney Donna Thurston regarding Ms. Kessler?
I don't recall the exact time, but it would have been a short time after we made contact with Ms. Kessler at the rest area.
So maybe sometime between 12:15 a.m. and 12:30?
I would estimate that.
All right, and then you made arrangements to meet at Judge Foster's home in Jacksonville to take an arrest warrant to him to sign.
Yes, ma'am.
And that warrant was for the offense of grand theft auto.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall what time it was when you actually left to go to Judge Foster's house?
No, ma'am.
It was about a 20-minute drive to his home.
I would estimate that. Yes, ma'am. And that is, I think, also what is in my report.
And how long were you at Judge Foster's home before he actually signed the warrant?
And again, it's an estimate, but a short time, I would say probably less than 15 minutes.
So maybe about 1 or 1:15. Would that be a fair guesstimation?
It's possible.
And that warrant directed sheriffs to deliver Ms. Kessler to the Nassau County Jail in Stanter, correct?
I would have to refer to the warrant, but that would be the normal wording when I obtain an arrest warrant.
And Ms. Thurston had drafted that warrant for you to present to Judge Foster?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and in Stanter means right now?
I don't know.
And you notified officers on the scene to take Ms. Kessler into custody?
I'm sorry, say that question again.
You notified officers on the scene to take Ms. Kessler into custody?
I notified officers on scene that the arrest warrant was signed and valid, yes, ma'am.
Did you scan or photograph the arrest warrant and send it to anybody on the scene?
I don't recall. I believe I just made contact via phone and told them the warrant was signed.
And when you made contact via phone, did you tell the officers that the warrant directed that Ms. Kessler be taken to Nassau County in Stanter?
No, ma'am.
And eventually Ms. Kessler was transported to the St. Johns County Jail, correct?
Yes,
And that was not to the Nassau County Jail.
Correct.
All right, now you mentioned Detective Brewer going to Sadler Road storage on Sadler, and getting Ms. Kessler's information from the office there.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Detective Brewer have a warrant to obtain that information?
No, ma'am.
And he just simply asked and received the information from storage on Sadler, correct?
Correct.
And then also the report that you mentioned that the other officer, whose name escapes me now, at Jolene Cummings' home, you knew there was a call into the sheriff's office on a domestic violence situation involving Jolene Cummings and Jason G.E.E.
Yes, ma'am.
And you knew that that domestic violence incident had occurred on May 14, 2018?
No, ma'am, that's not the.
I'm sorry, that was when she was reported missing. I'm sorry, it was May. I'm sorry, I've lost the day. Oh, May 9th.
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Pinkston on May 9th.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were aware that Officer Pinkston had created a report that said that Jolene Cummings and Jason G had been involved in a domestic violence situation?
Domestic situation.
Domestic situation. And it was obviously violent because the cabinets were pulled off the hinges and were hanging down.
Domestic violence would, that it was a heated domestic situation where damage was done to the home, but it's not domestic violence because there was no violence toward one of the persons involved.
It was apparent that there had been some kind of violent behavior in that home that Jolene Cummings shared with Jason G, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and there was nothing to indicate to you that Kimberly Kessler had ever been to that home?
No, ma'am.
And you were aware that there was no report that connected Kimberly Kessler with that home that Jason G and Jolene Cummings shared?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Judge, may I have a moment?
You may.
I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Can you redirect?
Detective Harrington, defense counsel asked you that you don't know who else saw Jolene Cummings after she left Tangles on Saturday, 5/12/2018. Do you have any evidence that Jolene Cummings left Tangles alive after working with the defendant on Saturday, May 12th, 2018?
No, ma'am.
And when you were investigating, especially early on in the investigation, the time frame we've been talking about, the 12th through the 18th, you saw that there was damage to the door at Jolene Cummings' home.
Yes, ma'am.
You didn't know how it occurred or when it occurred.
No, ma'am.
So could you rule out that that was or was not part of the crime that occurred against Jolene Cummings?
No, ma'am.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right, the witness may step down and you can, ready to go for the next witness?
David Douglas, Detective Douglas.
I do. Thank you, sir.
And just to advise that this is a camera, you are on video and audio. Go ahead.
If you're comfortable, Detective, may he remove his mask as he testifies?
Not testifying, you can.
Good morning. Would you please state your name for the record?
My name is David, D-A-V-I-D. Last name is Douglas, D-O-U-G-L-A-S, 1S, Madam Court Reporter.
You're employed by the Nassau County Sheriff's Office?
I am.
In what capacity do you serve?
I'm employed, or my present duty station is professional standards. That's backgrounds, internal affairs.
And how long have you been with Nassau County Sheriff's Office?
I've been with Nassau County Sheriff's Office since November 7th of 2014.
And in May of 2018, what position did you hold at the Nassau County Sheriff's Office?
In May of 2018, I had recently been promoted to Criminal Investigations Divisions. I was a property crimes detective.
Detective Douglas, I want to direct your attention to May 16th, 2018 in the late evening. Did you respond to the rest stop in St. Johns County near 210 and I-95 North?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And were you in a vehicle?
Yes, ma'am, I was. I was in a Nassau County unmarked SUV.
When you arrived at the rest stop, did you see the defendant Kimberly Kessler's Kia?
Did I see her? Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And where was the Kia parked?
The Kia was parked at that point in time. The rest area was under construction. It typically was a driveway to the left that went in front of the restroom area that was closed down. The only avenues were the truck stops on the right-hand side to the east, and the Kia, trying to be brief here, was in the first row of vehicles in a truck spot, but all the way forward. It was a long parking lot.
Long parking space?
Long parking spot, yes, ma'am.
Okay, because they were built for the trucks and the trailers?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she have anyone parked next to her on either side?
On the, what would be from looking from the rear of her vehicle facing forward, there was a semi-tractor trailer. It was a container box type semi-tractor trailer on her right in the space immediately to her right. And behind her was a little red Ford Focus.
Okay. Did any police officer block her in?
No, ma'am.
Was her vehicle blocked in?
Her vehicle was not blocked in, no, ma'am. She was, in other words, it's a long parking space. She was all the way forward in that parking space. There was another vehicle behind her, and to her right was a semi-trailer, but directly ahead of her was a lane that you would turn. It was a one-way lane that you would turn left to exit the rest area, and there was no one in front of her.
Were you one of the officers who approached the Kia when once all the officers had arrived at the rest stop?
Yes, ma'am. I was one of a group of officers. I was alone in my vehicle, so I approached separately from the others.
Okay. Did you have your gun out?
Not initially, no, ma'am. When I first approached the vehicle, I had my flashlight out, the same one that I have presently. It's called a Stinger. It's in my left hand. I approached the vehicle from roughly, I would say, an 8 o'clock position. There were other officers that were approaching and were at the front right fender. Thomas Kelly was at the door. I came from roughly an 8 o'clock position behind, and my flashlight was out at that point in time.
Eventually, did you take your gun out?
Yes, ma'am. Eventually I did. As I approached the vehicle from the rear, at that point in time, keep in mind, I was only a few months out of patrol. I was still in patrol officer mode. One of the first things you always do is try to determine whether or not that vehicle's running. There are a variety of ways you can do that. In this instance, I could see vapor coming out of the tailpipe, exhaust pipe, so I knew the vehicle was running. And as I approached the vehicle and got very close, Ms. Kessler initially was not visible, but she came up, I saw her face, and she jumped into the driver's seat. And at that point in time, I drew my weapon. I did not point it at her, it was pointed at the ground.
And so you never pointed your gun at Ms. Kessler?
Never, no, ma'am.
Did you see any of the officers there point their firearm at Ms. Kessler or her vehicle?
All right, first of all, it was dark, all right, and I had my flashlight out. I did not see, to answer your question, no, I never saw anyone point their firearm at her. If we had done that, we would have had to fill out all kinds of reports, and none of us were inclined to do that.
Yes, sir.
Just so that you understand, I was a cover officer, the two lead detectives, and I don't mean to go on. I'm just saying that my whole point is that I'm supposed to provide safety to the other officers. So if anything bad happens, it's kind of on me. And
Yes, sir.
that's the reason I pulled out my weapon.
Yes, sir. Did you engage in conversation? Did Ms. Kessler exit her vehicle?
Yes, she did. Thomas Kelly was at the door. She exited her vehicle.
And then did you engage in conversation with Ms. Kessler at that time?
At that immediate instant, no, ma'am. What I did is I reached in, I immediately holstered my weapon. I mean, I had it out maybe 5-10 seconds. I holstered my weapon. As she exited the vehicle with Thomas Kelly, they went around to the other side of the vehicle. I reached in, and I know I had my weapon holstered by that time because I reached in and cut off the vehicle. I then walked around to the back of the vehicle and they were talking.
Okay. And you were not part of that conversation?
No, ma'am.
All right. Now, did you maintain a perimeter or a safety zone for Detective Kelly and Detective Harrington while they conversed with Ms. Kessler?
Yes, ma'am. That, as I said, that was my function. I was a cover officer. I was standing kind of behind her vehicle. They were off to the rear and side, close to the semi-trailer, and I was not a part of any conversation. I was just strictly safety cover.
Yes, sir. And while you were standing there, were there other citizens, public, there at the area of the rest stop where Ms. Kessler was?
Well, the rest area, surprisingly, at that hour of the night was fairly busy, but there were two distinct sets of individuals that I conversed with. First was the couple that was in the red Ford Focus. They wanted to know if I was moving my car. And I said, well, it's not my car. They were wanting to pull all the way through.
So they were asking if the Kia was going to be moved?
That's correct. If the
Okay.
Kia was going to be moved, and I said, not anytime soon, you can back out, and they did.
Okay. And was there any other citizen or public member around?
Yes, ma'am. Almost within, it seemed like seconds, there was a black male gentleman wearing a cap who asked me whether or not the SUV that was in front of his semi-tractor trailer, whether we were going to move that or not. He was the truck driver. He said he had to unhook.
Okay. So you've got citizens coming into that very vicinity and having conversations and then moving on.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any further questions.
Ross?
Morning, Detective Douglas.
Good morning, Mr. Woolen.
You say you've been with the sheriff's office since November 2014.
Yes, sir. November 7th of 2014.
Did you start off in corrections?
Yes, sir, I did. I started off in corrections and was there for right about a year.
Okay, and then started as a detective May 2018.
Yes, sir. I went from corrections roughly a year into patrol. I was in patrol for roughly 3 years, first on night shift and then on day shift. And then I went into criminal investigations division right around the beginning of 2018.
Okay. And I've been away for a little while, so I just wanted to follow up on your progress. Congratulations for moving up in the organization.
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay, so you mentioned that a portion of this rest area was closed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Part of it was closed.
Okay, so would that mean there was limited areas for cars and vehicles to?
Well, and I guess perhaps I didn't make myself clear. The way the rest area at I-95 North, just on the north end of St. Johns County is laid out is when you exit heading north, normally you would go, they have a sign that says car traffic to the left, truck traffic to the right. And in between is the restroom area But for whatever reason, and you'd have to talk to the Department of Transportation. I noticed after that, it went on for like a year. The car portion was closed off. All traffic was routed to the right. And it was all these long parking lots, parking spaces, excuse me, long angled for truck parking.
Okay.
And she was on that side all the way forward in one of the truck spaces.
So closest to the facilities in the middle.
The first driveway is closest to the facilities, yes, sir. It's one way. There's a row of parking spaces that are angled for trucks. There's another roadway, one way, and then there's another row. There's two rows of truck parking spaces separated by travel lanes.
So if the Kia, if a person driving that Kia had wanted to leave, could have just, if I'm picturing it right, pulled forward and then continue, would that be to the northerly direction?
Well, and I can't speak for what a person would do, but ordinarily, it would be my belief that if you're all the way forward in that parking space, there's a travel lane directly in front of you, one way, that if you wanted to exit and leave that parking space or get out on the interstate, you would pull directly forward and then move to your left, turn left.
Okay. Okay, now, you were part of a team of over a half dozen officers, correct?
I'm trying to remember exactly. The number fluctuated depending on our task. In this particular case, it was myself, Detective Don Brewer, Thomas Kelly, Detective Thomas Kelly, Detective Wayne Harrington, who just testified. I'm trying to think who else was there. There may have been.
Well, let me ask.
Yes, sir.
Detective Rose was, I think, was the first
Yes.
officer.
Detective Rose was there. Detective Rose was kind of our, for the lack of a better term, pathfinder spotter. She was on the south side of Jacksonville, so she was already there. I did not see her till later. I did not know. I just didn't even know she was there until later.
Okay. And well, I've had the benefit of, we reviewed Detective Harrington's very thorough report. He mentioned 2 FBI agents. Do you recall that?
I had zero contact with any FBI agents. I will not dispute that they were there. If I could, and I don't want to bore you unnecessarily, but I was looking for Miss Seibert's vehicle on the north end of Amelia Island. I was called by one of my supervisors and said, hey, we're heading to Jacksonville. I didn't have any team, discussions. I drove to the south side of Jacksonville. I was on the tail end of the group. There may have been FBI agents there. I'm pretty sure there were. I had no knowledge or contact with them, so I can't honestly under oath answer your question that these detectives were there.
Fair enough. Do you remember Captain Anstett?
Yes, Captain Anstett was there.
Okay. And Detective Corbett?
I did not have any contact with Detective Corbett. I know who Detective Corbett is. I believe he may have had something to do with this, but again, that night in the dark at the rest area, I had no contact with Detective Corbett. So for me to testify under oath that he was there, I can't do that, Mr. Miller. I apologize.
That's fine. Well, fair enough to say we have multiple law enforcement officers along with multiple law enforcement vehicles present.
Yes, sir. That's very fair to say. This was a missing persons case. Approximately 3 days afterwards, we were pretty desperate to try to find Miss Cummings, and it was kind of like an all hands situation. We were hoping that she was still alive and that we'd be able to locate her. And whatever we had to do to find her, that's what we were doing.
So you consider this a high profile case?
I don't know how to quantify high profile. It became one, yes, sir. When I was involved, it was a missing persons case that we were very much hoping to find Miss Cummings for the benefit of her family and her children, her 2 sons. Yeah, we were hoping she was alive and we could find her.
Okay, so you described you were one of the officers who approached this Kia.
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. If someone driving that Kia had attempted to exit, would they have been stopped?
I can't speak for other officers. Again, my purpose, we were there to speak to her as a witness.
Okay.
It was my understanding. Would she have been stopped by other officers? I can't speak for them. Again, I was basically a safety officer. There were detectives standing at the right front fender, Detective Harrington. I was concerned that she was going to run over them. If she ran over them and harmed them, that was on me. And so I would not have permitted that, if that answers your question. I would not have permitted her to run over the officers.
Okay. Well, you did say when you observed the person in the Kia move to the driver's seat, you drew your weapon, correct?
Yes, sir. The vehicle was running. The officers were standing at the front fender. And to me, when a vehicle is running and someone, in her case, her feet were pointing towards the front of the vehicle when I first saw her with my flashlight. And I honestly believed that she was going to, because I couldn't see her hands went down. And I thought she was going to put it in gear and move forward. I wasn't going to permit her to run over other officers.
Okay. And I hadn't heard the flashlight referred to as a stinger. Why is it referred to?
That's the generic trade name. It's a small flashlight. In fact, I have it here, and it's called a stinger because it's small. It's not like the old mag light, Kel lights. It's a high lumens rechargeable flashlight, and the trade name is Stinger. I believe it's made by Streamlight.
Okay. Okay, so you notice the car running, you notice Ms. Kessler moved to the driver's seat.
Yes, sir.
At this point, could you tell who it was?
I could see that it was a white female and very little else. The windows were tinted, the rear windows were tinted. That's why I prefer to use a Stinger. It cuts through that film, but did I know who she was at that instant? No, sir.
Okay.
I knew who we were looking for. I knew what the lady looked like, but at that instant, as I'm approaching the vehicle in the dark, could I say that that was her? I could not.
And she did exit the vehicle, correct?
She did.
Okay. That was upon being ordered to do so, correct?
Well, Thomas Kelly was trying to talk to her, and I remember him saying, calling her by that. At that point in time, we thought her name was Jennifer Siebert. He said, Miss Siebert, can you open the door? Miss Siebert. That's all I remember. She opened the door, she exited, I leaned in, cut off the vehicle.
Okay. Would you agree a reasonable person in that situation with that many officers around would know that they should get out of the vehicle, or they're...
Well, I think in legal terminology, I'm not an attorney, but that would be called a consensual encounter. She could easily say no. And that was the entire evening as far as I was concerned.
So she could have drove away.
If she had chosen to, she could have, yes, sir.
And none of these officers would have stopped her.
Again, I can't speak to other officers. We can only take it one step at a time. I was not the lead detective. I was not the second in command.
I'll focus on your involvement. of course.
And I'm trying to understand, Mr. Miller, but
Yeah.
the point of it is, I was simply there to back up those detectives, and they would make those decisions. I know that at a later time, I was told that if she wanted to leave, she could go.
Well, you reached into the car and turned it off.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you told civilians who inquired that the Kia was not going to be moving for a while.
No, the gentleman asked me, "Are you leaving?" He was under the impression that was my vehicle. And I simply told him, I don't know whether it's not my vehicle.
Okay, but I thought you said on direct that you told him it's not going to be moving for a while or something to that effect.
That may have been what I told him. I let them know that the vehicle, I wasn't going to be moving that vehicle.
Okay. Okay, and Ms. Kessler was put into, was it Detective Brewer's vehicle?
Yes, sir. Detective Brewer had a silver Impala, and that's where she sat in the front seat.
And prior to her being put into that vehicle, did you ever hear Detective Harrington asking Ms. Kessler questions there?
Both Detective Harrington and Detective Kelly were standing with her, talking to her on the passenger side of the vehicle. Did I overhear? I couldn't hear what they were saying, sir.
Okay. Do you know if she was read her rights at
I
that
do
time?
not know that, sir. As I
Let me
said,
ask it this way, you didn't hear anyone read her rights there?
I did not hear that.
You didn't read her rights?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. And it's my understanding Ms. Kessler was in Detective Brewer's car. I believe you were in it also for maybe a couple hours or so?
It seemed like that. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. She was in Detective Brewer's front seat. They were conversing. I was in the back seat. It's not a cage car. She wasn't restrained. They seemed to be conversing quite nicely.
Okay. So you'd say at that point, she could even have opened the door and gone on her way?
Absolutely, she could have. As a matter of fact, at the point in time that I was standing outside the vehicle, I asked, what if she wants to leave? They said she gets to leave.
When you turned off the Kia, what did you do with the keys?
The key stayed in the vehicle. I didn't want anybody to steal it, number one. We've had that happen before, where vehicles are left running and someone else drives off in them. But the simple point of the fact is that I specifically asked that, and they said, keep an eye on it. And I said, well, what if she wants to leave? They said, she gets to go, just stay with her.
When you say they, who was that?
It was the detectives. She was not, I was like, okay, what am I doing here? Is basically my feeling. They said, stay with her. I said, does she need to be cuffed? No. As a matter of fact, Detective Rose came up on one occasion. That's the first time that I'd seen her. She asked me, is she cuffed? I said, no, she's not cuffed.
All right, could I have a moment?
Okay.
Detective Douglas, are weapons usually drawn during a consensual encounter?
It depends on the reasons for that. And as I indicated to you, this was for safety purposes. There were If you're asking, do I generally do that? No, I don't generally do that. I have done it as a patrol officer for 3 years, depending on the circumstances, when I've approached a vehicle. Weapons are drawn. You don't point them at anyone. You're not trying to gain compliance. You do it for safety purposes.
Okay. But you did say that generally is not done.
Generally, it's not unless there's a circumstance that warrants it.
Anything further?
Any redirect?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, step down.
Thank you, sir. May I be excused?
You may be excused, I believe, as well, correct?
Yes, sir. He has a sergeant's exam to finish. I was advising the court that you had an exam, a sergeant's exam to
I
Yes,
finish.
sir.
appreciate you interrupting that and providing testimony today.
Thank you. I will be at the sheriff's office if you need.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any other witnesses?
No.
All right, then, let's do this. It's 10:49, we're going about an hour and a half. So I'm gonna take about a 10-minute break and then we'll start. I'm listening to arguments at that point.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. We recess.
All right.
You can.
You gotta do the stipulations. Yeah. Yes. Oh my God, thank you. Oh my God, I was 2 years younger then. Wow, I thought you were giving me a cash card with $1 million.
No, man, no, I don't know.
You would have cut that, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's nice. Yeah, right.
He's a good friend of mine. Did you get all that?
And the last one. So the last one is TUMM. See the cat.
Kenny.
Yes,
I'm like a jury room. Is that ladies room?
Sure.
Or is that against the rules now too? Karen, are you surprised to see David Douglas?
No, because I'm reading to me the parking lot.
Lights are still on. It's true. Okay, okay.
I came into session, mics are still on, it's streaming.
Inside or outside?
In here, right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, currently, so
Okay, thank you.
you guys hearing everything.